Hello, everybody. This is Marna Schwartz, Intimacy Coach. I'm so excited to be here with you today because I have a super special guest. Now, are you going through something or have you gone through something that like a health crisis, cancer, chemo, tumor, fibroid, something where you said to yourself, holy crap, I need help? Or has someone in your family gone through something like this? I think the truth is most of us have had this experience or have loved someone through this kind of experience. And the truth is it's really, really hard. It can be really challenging just to get through it yourself. And then from the point of view of just getting all the things handled that need to get handled, it can feel overwhelming. It can feel isolating. It can feel almost impossible. So that's why I'm so glad to be here today with my special guest, Lisa Herendeen. Now, Lisa is super, I can't speak more highly of a woman in my life. She is an amazing mom, social worker, mediator, dancer, lover of life, and she survived cancer a couple years ago. And, you know, when I went through my fibroid crisis, right, I had lost too much blood. I was in the emergency room. I was bleeding too much. I needed a transfusion. I needed surgery. I had it in my heart and my mind that I could ask for help, partly because of what I saw through Lisa's experience being at the other side of it. In the graceful and gracious way, she was thankful and asking for help and receiving help and just had come through it with so much grace and beauty. And I was like, wow, I didn't know that was possible, but I am so very glad. So in a lot of ways, Lisa has touched my life by making it more possible for me to go through a really a crisis situation in my health with the help of community. So what else? Yeah, I'm just so grateful and excited that she said yes to talking with us about this today. I know a lot of you are going through health crises or have been through health crises, and welcome, Lisa.
Thank you. Thanks. That's such a nice introduction.
You're so welcome. It's all true. Yeah. I don't know if you knew that or not. When I went through my mega crisis, I was like, well, Lisa did it.
I'm so happy to hear that it was inspiring.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Inspiring and empowering, just the idea of a woman owning her value enough to ask for and receive support in that way. And I don't even know if I would have put it like that at the time. I think at the time it was just like, wow, I didn't know that was on the menu, but wow. So what would you like to share about that by means of introduction and health crises and just so many women are going through this right now, whether it's cancer, whether it's chemo, whether it's fibroids, whether it's a mastectomy, whether it's a hysterectomy, whether it's a myomectomy. I had a laparoscopic myomectomy, but my journey of surgery and making it through and asking for help, I think, is similar to the one that a lot of people and women are going through at this time.
Well, I think one thing to keep in mind is women are really good at creating community. But one of the things we're bad at is making ourselves small and not wanting to be a burden to anybody. So, celebrate the fact that we're good at community and know that, making yourself small isn't necessarily good for your community. And in the health crisis that I went through, it was a really dramatic time because it was not only that I had cancer, but I had to start chemo and leave my condo, and everything just seemed to be falling apart at the same time. And so I didn't really think about it. Tom, my friend, just said, well, the dance community has not had a good project in a long time, not since we put the new speakers up. So you're our new project. And he really set about very methodically making me the project. Like it was unacceptable to him that I would have to go through cancer without the support of a community. And yeah, I think it was good for all of us. You know, it was good for me to learn that it's okay to ask for help, and the community really rose to the occasion. They seemed to have a good time. Like the day they were making me move out of my place, they wouldn't even let me come over and pack anything because I had started chemo that day and I was at my sister's, kind of out of it. And a friend of mine went over that day and she goes, "Your friends are great. They're having such a good time. They were singing, they were packing my dishes." It was inspiring.
Mm-hmm. So something about having someone to care about helped bring people together.
Yeah. And there was a lot of people, I think, that they'd had loved ones go through a health crisis and feel really helpless. And so Tom, by organizing everybody, was like really clear. Here's what you can do. And everyone was just like, what can I do? Okay, I've got a list of things. Like, you can help because you've got a truck and you can help her move, and you've got time so you can take her to chemo, and you're techie so you can help do the website. He just helped people figure out what they could do because they wanted to know what they could do.
Mm-hmm. I think it's so beautiful to have the support of a loving community to come and be there for you like that. And, you know, not everybody has a sort of built-in community to draw from, but everybody knows people, right? Everybody is in community in some way, right? Whether it's your grocery store or a church or something like that. You know, when I was asking the women in my free Facebook group, the Erotic Empowerment for Women group, saying, hey, you know, what do you want to know? What questions do you have? And one of the questions that came up is, how do you even get the courage to ask for help?
Well, you know, I was thinking a little bit about that. And I mean, one of the points I was going to emphasize is that it's good for your community. But I think you need to be in a community where you see people face to face. You know, if you have a school or, you know, like a workplace, someplace where you're face to face seeing people, then they're gonna want to help.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So they're going to want to help. And we talked about, we sort of, in our conversation about what we were going to share and how we were going to share it, since we've both been through an experience like this, we talked about 8 steps, 8, you know, ways of approaching this, right? And it's not just women, and it's not just, you know, cancer, and it's not just uterine problems, right? It's one of our participants today is a man who's looking for support, and his partner, a woman who, and they're together looking for support around how do I create the love bubble for myself, where we're not trying to do it by ourselves, but we're you know, opening ourselves to ask for and receive from community a little bit. So as you and I were talking about the you know, how do we share what we learned about this experience, we sort of distilled it into 8 steps, which, you know, are not mechanical and not like, you know, do step 1 before step 3 or else it's not going to go well. Just, you know, 8 things to think about, 8 ways to approach this whole conversation, which can be super confronting for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So I wonder if you have any thoughts before we dive into those steps.
Nope, dive right in.
Okay, cool. Well, okay, just to consider for a moment, without the help of community, right? What happens? People get burned out. People feel isolated. They feel depleted. They feel frustrated, alone, helpless. What else?
Yeah, and I think that I was really lucky that there was, you know, a good number of people in our community, because one person can't do it. You know, like, let's say you've got a wonderful husband, wife. It's just it's too big. My health crisis, it was a year of pretty intense medical stuff to get me back on track. And we, Tom and I, when we would brainstorm, we knew there was like the A team, and they would eventually burn out. And then we would go to the B team, and then we'd go to the C team. And we were pretty strategic about it.
Mm-hmm.
He also was wise in saying, family's always going to disappoint you because you expect so much from them.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty tricky area, because we have this idea that, your closest significant other is going to be able to get it. And sometimes it's really hard for them for whatever reason. They can't show up in certain ways. That's why it's really good to have a, some other people around when the person you're really close to is disappointing you. You can go, oh, that's okay, I can call Barbara,
Right. Absolutely. Which is totally fair and reasonable, right? Because to expect one person to carry the whole load of everything that needs to be done is just, it's heartbreaking what it can do to a relationship. It's heartbreaking what it can do, in terms of just wearing, the person down who's just really trying to get well. And then, if their support system is limited to one person, it's too much. It's too much to ask for one person. And I think that's part of why we have these opportunities to build community.
Yeah.
And by offering ourselves. So let's jump into the steps. Oh, with the caveat that with help, it can go so much better. It can go so much more easily, right? You can get through it without burning out. Your loved ones can get through it without hating every day. It's just so much better when you can create.
Yeah, it is. It's so much better for your close family members, because otherwise you can really get down on them not showing up for you.
Yeah.
That was the takeaway for me. It was like, wow, I'm so glad I have other family, because I had family members, my mother, for example, was dealing with my father who had a health crisis at the time. And, it just was too much to ask.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing that I really want to bring home is that if you're dealing with this, if you're dealing with a health crisis of any kind, even if you're dealing with a mental health crisis of any kind, if you're dealing with, just having too much on your plate, you are not alone. Okay. There are so many people dealing with surgeries, with, depression, with too much stress, with whatever it is. We're talking specifically about surgery and getting support around that because it's visible, it's easy to see, right? But you could actually apply this to lots of different areas and lots of different opportunities.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I'm really glad you pointed that out, because it's not just the easy to see crises,
right,
that we have to form community around.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, even when we have surgery and it's like, you're okay. I can't tell you what a big difference it made for me when, friends would show up to keep me company. Other friends show up and, fed me food. Other friends showed up and just cuddled me, right?
Yeah.
It made a huge difference in my recovery and how I was able to heal.
Yeah.
That I had people there for me.
Yeah. You can't underestimate, people think, well, what can I do? But it's just being there. I remember Tom, I had to go in, after the initial diagnosis for a couple of meetings with the oncologist. Mm-hmm. And he was so insistent that I take somebody from the community. Mm-hmm. And at first I did. And then one day I was like, oh, why bother? And I was like, wow, I really should have brought somebody.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you noticed that for yourself, the difference that it made.
Yeah, it really made a difference. Yeah.
So sitting there with someone, you felt better, more empowered.
Yeah, less alone. Yeah. Understood. Plus, you're not always thinking straight in a medical situation. It's good to have another person there.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So without further ado, so the first step that you and I figured out together, like how to do this, is number one, recognize that you need help. You want to say anything
Absolutely.
about
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. And
Absolutely.
probably getting really specific about, I just don't have the energy to cook. Like, and not feel ashamed about it. I think shame can be such a like a damper on connection. Um, you have to be a little vulnerable and
Hmm.
be able to say, I can't cook, even though you pride yourself on being a good housekeeper or wataver. I
Hmm.
just can't cook right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's for the person in the position of healing or in the person in the caretaking, role, to be able
Yeah.
to say, I don't got it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
So
think we,
recognizing.
especially, women, we sort of go into, I should be able to do it all.
Me, superwoman. Huh.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, if you know Brene Brown, do you know her work? She's a researcher from University of Texas. She's all over Facebook,
Hmm.
TED
Yeah.
Talk. So she did some research on shame and vulnerability, and women's shame and vulnerability is all around not being able to do it all, conflicting, you know, demands, and thinking we got to juggle it all.
Hmm. Hmm. Brene Brown. She did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank goodness for these resources who are helping us see clearly, like, oh, it's not something to be ashamed of, which is actually the second step that we identified is unshame asking. It can be a gift for community and can bring people closer together.
Yeah. Yeah. Shame can't live when it's being discussed. So, talking it through, being vulnerable is a huge part of getting community. I mean, Tom and I had already bonded around another issue before I got cancer. Um, and I remember the dance teacher saying, well, he's gone through something like this. You should talk to him. And I was just like, oh, I don't know. He's here to dance. I don't want to bother him. And then we got to be good friends, because I shared that I had a family situation that was like his family situation. And so then, you know, I'd already been kind of vulnerable. And when cancer came, boy, he was like right there for me.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And it also shows the power of just opening up and
Yeah. Yeah. It draws people to each other. I
mhm,
mean, you have to be able to tolerate a little bit of discomfort because I think we're all trained to, not be too vulnerable. And of course, you don't want to be vulnerable in certain situations, maybe in the workplace. It's certainly, certain places you can't be too vulnerable, but it's really the only way. It's a more wholehearted, connected way of living.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, and that's where relationship happens, right?
Yeah.
It's so
Right.
scary to be like, well, I'm not perfect in this area,
Yeah.
but if it's like two people pretending that everything's perfect and fine, like that's two lonely people.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Hmm. So kudos to you for taking that step and being courageous and approaching someone and being vulnerable and saying, this is what's going on with me.
Yeah, and thank goodness, because then we became close friends, and that that friendship has it's been great for both of us.
Hmm. Yeah, and it rippled into this vortex of support for you in community, so people could really live into what it would be like to support a community member.
Yeah, and after that community had kind of sporadic, it's not a church. It came together, and it got organized. With a website, Helping Hands website. There's a lot of techie people because we live in Silicon Valley. Um, it was kind of in place when another friend of ours fell off his roof and was in the hospital for a brain concussion. And then it was really easy for the community because I was on the mend, and the community just kind of really was able to show up for him.
It's beautiful. So they've lived into this example of possibility. You were vulnerable. He sees leadership. They got into motion, and then they were they were practiced at it.
Yeah, and probably for Bart and Julian, I mean, they're in the article, so I'm sure they don't mind me talking about them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it might have really been nice to know, well, it's okay. Like you said, it's okay to get everybody together and need help.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's a big take-home point is, for anyone watching this, you're probably resonating with this in some way, which is what brought you to us to watch this together. And like, it's okay. It's okay to need help. It's okay to ask for help. Um, and so I'm glad that we're helping unpack it a little bit around what to do to get that courage and to create it for yourself.
You know, we live in California where a lot of the traditional institutions aren't around. So, you know, it is kind of a brave new, we are creating new ways of connecting and community here. You
Mm-hmm.
know, a lot of us are transplants. I'm from the East Coast. Um, most of my friends are transplants. We don't have close family here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I don't know about you, but I sort of spent a long time yearning for community and yearning to feel like closeness with an extended group of people,
It's
in
so
a way.
natural. It's
Yeah.
so part of our biology. We've always lived this way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It takes a village, not just to raise a child, but really to have a good integrated life. It takes a village to have, friendships and multidimensional relationships and, all sorts of, layers of support and systems. One of the things that I like to do is talk about regenerative community. And part of looking at that is from my permaculture background where, plants guild together.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's not like if you have all a field of corn, then that corn is going to need some other stuff at some point. But if you've got corn and, beans and squash, right, the three sisters from the Native American perspective, they grow well together because they all do slightly different things.
Right. Yes. Yes.
So weaving
One of the
together the community, we
Yeah.
all do different things and we all do different things at different times, but
Yeah.
allowing that and inviting that as a resource for one another is so important.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Um, so the third step that we talked about is identify and clarify what you need. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
I think you have to kind of get into the more planning part of your brain when you're in a crisis.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't, I deal with emotional processing all the time because I'm a therapist, but it was a real right brain kind of activity where Tom would call me on the phone every morning at 7. We would plan out the hospital trips, who was going to take me to chemo. And I think that people responded well to it being really well organized,
Mm-hmm.
and me really being reflective. Of course, I had a friend to talk about it with, in terms of really specifically what he always called it opportunities to help Lisa. He could be a dance. There's an opportunity to go over and help her clean her kitchen because she just moved and she needs, and somebody did. Like one of our friends did that. She just was another mom and she came over and, helped me get the spices all organized and helped me set up my kitchen. Just real specific tasks.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's awesome. And so you trusted them to some degree to say yes when they could say yes and say no if they couldn't.
Yeah. And whenever I also noticed that with some people, I did have to calm them down because for some people it was really scary. Like either they had had a health crisis or they were, I had to reassure them that my prognosis was pretty good. I was going to make it through.
Mm-hmm.
That's just something that I guess you just have to be aware that for some people, it's not that easy to help. They get scared when you're not well. I tried to always be just as nice as possible. People would see me at dance and they'd say, "Oh, I feel so guilty," and I'd be like, "No, don't. I don't want anybody feeling guilty for not being able to get involved. There's plenty of people getting involved, people doing what they can do."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that actually brings us. Well, that's one of our other points. So identify and clarify what you need. Just to complete this idea first. I know. I think I set up a helping hand something, or at least a spreadsheet of opportunities, and with times and, this is what I need. And it's, you have to put yourself in that place of like, okay, and as much as possible, if you can do it before the procedure, it's great. If you're doing it after the procedure, better late than never. But like, just like thinking through like, okay, I need to get up. Okay, I'm going to have trouble getting out of bed. Okay, a person to help me get out of bed. That would be awesome. Like someone just with me to even do the things that I didn't think of, keeping me company. Someone doesn't have to be a 5-star chef. Someone doesn't have to be, extraordinary at doing anything really, except just being there. And if somebody isn't available in their time-wise to be there, if they want to drop off some food or order me takeout or, there's so much to do, and there's so many different ways to ask for and receive support. And like you said, just distilling what it is that you're wanting and needing so you can ask for it clearly is super helpful. So number 4, invite or receive a lead advocate who's not afraid to reach out and organize on your behalf if possible. So for you, this was Tom.
Yeah. And that made it a lot easier to ask for help because, it is kind of uncomfortable to say, I can't get out of bed or I need somebody to drive me to San Francisco. Yeah, it was really helpful to have somebody sort of the point person, at least, at the beginning stages when I was not so good at it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So yeah, having an advocate, and I had one as well. My dear friend Paul, went with me to the surgery, stayed there during the surgery, was there when I woke up. I didn't even recognize him when I first woke up, but wow. I was so happy all I could tell, like I opened my eyes and like, there's this man in front of me and I'm like I didn't really know who I was. So I didn't really know who he was. And I didn't know anything, but he was kind. And I could tell in that moment that he was kind. So I was glad he was there.
Yeah, just the energy. Yeah.
Yeah. Such a big difference. And then, just in terms of, people who helped me and were, partially lead advocates. So Paul helped organize people. There was a Facebook Messenger group and he let people know, what I needed when, at some points. And I also did at some points, especially as I got better, when my dear friend Mia stayed overnight with me the first night. And that made a big difference also, just having somebody there because I couldn't really get out of bed by myself very well. So just all the little pieces and players, it's such a big difference.
Yeah. Yeah. And people want to help.
Yeah, absolutely. So number 5, know who to ask for what. Experienced patients, food, transport, needles, and hikes. Want to say a little more about that?
Wow, that's a big one. Well, I was thinking not to be too Pollyanna-ish about it because there are certain people that you can't ask for help. They're actually, they could act really bad. I mean, I had a boss. I was a clinical supervisor at an agency, and when I got cancer, he just let me go. He said, "We can't afford to keep you." So some people react really badly to your health stuff, and I think it's important to process that anger and focus on the good people, on the people who are there, but process some of the anger and realize that some people aren't going to show up well at all.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then other people who show up, knowing who to ask for what sorts of things, or just being handed.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Tom had people organized into people who were afraid of needles or not afraid of needles, and then other people. So the not afraid of needles were our friends who had either dealt with cancer or something very scary like cancer, wouldn't be too afraid to go to the hospital with me. And then there were those, our friends who didn't really have that, like they're more into the fun aspect of life. And one of our friends took me for a long hike when I was halfway through chemo, which was just wonderful. We went to find a waterfall down in Big Sur that I had known when I was a child. He's not somebody you want to go to. He won't go to the hospital with you. I was like, but he's great at hiking.
Yeah.
So know what people's capabilities are.
Yeah. Yeah. And to some degree, allow them to self-select.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, because you don't want to push people into things they're uncomfortable doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Like offering them like, hey, I noticed I need help with this, this, and this. Is there any of those that you'd be willing to help out with?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Or is there some other way? If someone says, oh, I wish I could do something to help, you can give them that. And they're like, oh, I don't really want to do any of those things. You can be like, okay, great. Do you have any other ideas?
Yeah. Play with people's, what their strengths are.
Yeah.
I mean, my mother was far away, and during this whole thing, like, it's complicated, but one of my friend's neighbors helped out with something, and I didn't know her, and I wasn't really going to have a chance to ever meet her, but she was older than me, and we decided to let my mother write her a thank you note, which it was nice.
Lovely. So we had a write-in question. Someone said, I understand I can't give help to someone who doesn't want it. Given that, any suggestions to offer help to someone who is in the shame of her disease or surgery process and won't talk or receive help?
Oh, that's a hard one.
Yeah.
So a friend who is feeling a lot of shame around her disease and having a really hard time reaching out.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say maybe just let your friend know that she's not alone, that you're there for her, that, she can trust you to say yes or no if there's something that she needs, that, to feel free to ask for it. And you'll be a big girl and say yes if you mean yes and no if you mean no, and not be afraid to ask, and just let her know that you care about her no matter what.
Yeah, and I would just stay connected. If you sense that they don't want to talk about the illness, talk about other things.
There you go.
Find other, like maybe you guys have kids in common, or find some reason to, just really stay in communication.
Yeah.
Until they start opening up.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So number 6, balance trusting self-choice boundaries with not overburdening people. Do you want to say a little bit about that?
I guess, it's a balancing. I mean, people like helping you when you can show that you're helping yourself. When they see you as doing everything that you can do for yourself. I think that helps a lot. I helped a woman who was going through a different kind of crisis. And one of the things I really liked about her was every time I would give her resources, this is in the legal field, she would follow up. She's really proactive, and she would follow through on things that were really helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So there's a balance again, balance. So balance comes into so many ways of, being open to, ask for and receive support. And also at a certain point, doing what you can do, not wallowing, so to speak, right? Not overstretching yourself, not, taking things on too soon, right? Like, I've got it all together, right? That's the old system and method of just like showing that you are trying to portray that you have it all together when you don't. So not going back into that mask, but really, being earnest and tender and open and inviting and welcoming and real, like, I can't do this myself, you know?
Yeah. And then just being really grateful when people
Yeah.
show up,
Yeah.
you know, just,
Absolutely.
you got to surrender to, I can't, I just, thank God you're here. I really
Yeah.
need you, you know,
Yeah. Absolutely.
and I'm just so grateful and open to whatever you can do because it's come to that point.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, so number 7, be realistic and don't get disappointed. Forgive people who can't show up.
Yeah, I mean that's just part of it. Like I was saying about the boss, you know, like forgive him for his, you know, it wasn't meant to be that I would stay there,
Yeah. Yeah.
and and you know, forgive, move on, focus on the good people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Don't you know? Don't get. It's hard to not get down.
Yeah.
I think during a health crisis because you know already you've got like why me like
Mm-hmm.
why do I have to deal with this
Mm-hmm.
like oh, this is so hard and
Yeah.
you don't want to push a second arrow on top of yourself by then um, getting really upset when people can't show up for you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. And just, to let that resonate with everybody, you're not alone. It's a very common experience to say, why me?
Yeah,
Why me? And
yeah,
to kind of have that, oh, right. And I think that's a really good point. Like if someone can't show up for you, do the best you can to be open-handed about it and let it go.
yeah,
And
do the
and
best you can. Yeah,
yeah, do the best you can and orient toward the people who can, which brings us to number 8, receive graciously and gratefully. Say thank you to everybody. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
yeah, even when you're like they really could be doing more here. Like even when in your heart you're going, yeah, like this is so ridiculous that you can't. You just have to smile and say you're doing great. You're doing fine.
Yeah. However they show up for you is a blessing. And, if they can't do the extra thing, like, okay, whatever.
Yeah, yeah,
So maybe somebody else will do it.
right, right.
Yeah. Yeah. And something I love about your experience, I think you mentioned you actually even wrote thank you notes to people.
Yeah, well, I was bored and handwritten thank you notes, and I knew I'd be going to class, and sometimes I couldn't even dance because I was too nauseous from the chemo.
Mm-hmm.
I would just sit outside and like whoever was at class that night who had helped me out, I'd be like, oh yeah, they bought me dinner. Oh yeah, I'm gonna write one for them. It made me
Mm-hmm.
feel good.
Yeah. I'm sure it
I mean,
made them feel good
getting
too.
into gratitude just really feels great. And it
Mm-hmm.
really kept me going too, to focus on how lucky I was to have these wonderful friends that
Mm-hmm.
organized on my behalf. And um, it was just so moving,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
really, buoyed my spirits.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it's had a ripple effect.
Well, that is so good to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we've got time for one or two maybe quick questions. If anybody has a quick question, feel free to raise your hand and we will give you an opportunity to share it. Okay, not seeing any hands right now. Cool. Um, let's come back around to Karen and Chuck. Promoting to panelist. Hi, Karen. Let's allow you to talk. Here we go. Panelists, unmute all. Here we go. Try again. Uh-oh. All participants, all panelists are unmuted.
There we go. Hi. Yeah. So Chuck, my partner Chuck, is laying down.
Oh, good. I'm glad that he's laying down. How you doing? How are you doing?
Good, good. Like we just, yesterday, in fact, I was just texting a friend about she wants to know if she should come over tonight. Yeah, yesterday was the first time um, that I reached out for help. And yeah, I think the point you said about, people do like to help. I was surprised. I asked one of my friends yesterday and she came over last night, that quick. So that was good. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And just to share with people, your partner is going through knee surgery?
Yeah, knee replacement surgery. Yeah, he had the surgery last week.
Yeah. So that's huge, and that's a heavy burden on a couple or a person or anybody. So was this helpful for you to help create more of a container for and what I love about this is it really creates the context of asking for help as a gift.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it gave me a different perspective on things, so it was helpful. Thank you.
Oh, I'm so glad, Karen. Very glad. All right. Well, tell Chuck we're sending him a big hug and we hope he feels better soon. And I hope that this presentation has been helpful for both of you in terms of just creating a precedent and permission to release any shame you might have about asking for help and asking for and receiving support from your community.
Thank you.
Absolutely. You're welcome. Thanks,
yeah,
Karen.
good luck to you. Good for you for letting your friend come over.
Thank you.
Yeah. Way to be courageous.
Listening on the iPad, but yeah, he's laying down.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but thank you.
Very good. All right. Thanks, Karen. And keep taking those courageous steps.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right. Well, oh, I did that again, didn't I? I made the wrong person go. Come back, Lisa. Here we go. Panelist. Welcome back, Lisa. I did it again. I made the wrong person go back to being a participant. Sorry. Oh, I need to.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
More.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Excellent.
Okay.
Welcome back.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, that was so nice.
That was great. Yeah. Do you have any well, how can people find out more about you? What are you up to these days? How do people get in touch?
Well, I'm a therapist in private practice, Lisa Herendeen Psychotherapy, and my specialty isn't really medical, but helping people with divorce, with kids, with co-parent counseling, all of those things, creating a new life for yourself, which, this was part of the journey for me, everything had to crash and then create a whole new life.
Yeah. I hear that. Good. Okay, good. I'm glad people have a way to get in touch with you. If anyone would like to reach out for some support from me, I invite you to connect with me on Facebook. If it feels like a conversation with me would be helpful for you, I invite you into a free phone call. You can claim yours. I only have a limited number every week. I think next week may be actually booked up at this point, but I'll open up the following week in case you feel inspired for some extra support. www.marnaschwartz.com/talk is how to claim an opportunity to chat together. If you're excited or inspired about any of these ideas or just feel like you need someone to talk with to help implement them, I encourage you to take me up on that invitation. Woo! Lisa, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about this and share about this. And I think really, the right people at the right time will find this video, and I'm so excited that we're able to create this opportunity, this little bubble of support for people when and where they.
Yeah, I really appreciate your energy. I even remember you coming over to dinner when I was still going through chemo, and just your focus on gratitude and your energy. And it was just really nice to have you around during my crisis time. So thank you. And thanks for putting this together.
You're so welcome, Lisa. Thank you so much for showing up.
Yeah.
And for contributing your kindness and your wisdom and your presence.
Hey, I mean, yeah, if people can learn from that, great.
Absolutely.
It's a wonderful thing.
Yeah. Let's empower one another and lift each other up. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, if that kind of awfulness I went through can inspire people, I love it. Who knew, right?
Who knew?
The way the world works.
The what?
The way the world works.
The way the world works. And so if you're watching this, if you're a viewer and you're watching this, and just know that you getting inspired and being courageous and taking steps to extend and be vulnerable and ask for support in your community can be a gift to your community that can ripple outward in ways that you may not even comprehend yet, and really empower and embolden other people to ask for the help that they need. So, be courageous. Let this light light your light, and let us all rise up together.
Great.
All right. Thanks, everybody. See you again real soon. Mwah.
Right. Thanks, Marna.
You're
Bye.
welcome. Bye.